So, we're told that the Constitution guarantees and offers us fundamental rights. Why is the government refusing to respect our fundamental rights?
See, the government over the years, and more recently you can see it in a very dominant kind of way, the government is now using methods for social control. It's seeing the need for exercising social and political control for it to go ahead with its agenda. Fundamental rights should be a priority on their agenda for them to recognize. Since it is not, the easiest way of dealing with it is by going on imposing restrictions, which they've done over the years. And now they criminalize all action. So it's no longer, the debate is not even on fundamental rights as far as the state is concerned.
Any examples of recent things that have happened which...
On fundamental rights, yeah, sure. My favorite example of the UID, or of the NCTC, or of the National Intelligence Grid, where they're saying that, forget about, for instance, they say the poor don't have any interest in these fundamental rights business, they need food. So it's like, you don't need your rights, what you need is welfare and services. If you get your electricity, you shouldn't worry about somebody else's fundamental rights. If you get your food in time, you shouldn't worry about your own fundamental rights, because the state then is a service provider. So you forego your rights so that we can, and then we'll see how we are going to provide you the service. This is there's a certain diabolic nature to this, to the way in which this is debated. You bring corruption and inefficiency to a point where people are so fed up with it that you can get them to give up almost anything to have the state deliver on something else. That's one. I think that's as far as the service delivery is concerned. But I think the other huge problem is that terrorism has become just a phrase that encompasses everything which would allow the dilution of fundamental rights. And fear is a factor for losing fundamental rights. And fear is now being implanted deliberately in the minds of people. And the promise that is made is that if you give up your fundamental rights, maybe we can provide you with a little better protection.
The other issue, the state itself appears to be anti-democratic. Where people are, fighting for democracy, or they say that they're fighting for democracy, the state appears anti-democratic. How is that?
I'm not sure that we should even look for a state being democratic. It's not a state, it's not the government which is democratic, it's people who are democratic. States, in fact, find it very inconvenient to have to practice democracy. They need democracy to survive as a democratic state, because that's the only way that the game of politics gets played out. And there is a certain value that some of them may have for a constitutional and moral, ethical, in that sense, way of life. But it's people on whom the burden rests to ensure that democracy is not lost. Therefore, every assertion, like we keep saying, that if you don't exercise your fundamental rights, you lose them. They vanish. And it's therefore become important that, when I think somebody asked if India is a fake democracy. I don't think so at all. The fact that there are so many movements all across the country, it's not like everyone has to be right to be able to say what they are saying. But everyone should be able to say and should be able to find a space where they can discourse on all of this. And to do more than that, and to do things for each other, to find support across classes, castes, whatever. That is the practice of democracy, and that is done by people. So I think if you're asking, if we were to ask, can democracy survive in India? I think so long as the people of India are clear that, and that there are classes among the people of India, there are groups among the people of India who believe in the practice of democracy and who keep practicing it, I think we're all right.
In the case of Koodankulam, since March 19th and even before that, there's been a whole lot of language war that has been deployed. And also now a war using IPC sections. The media has also played a very interesting role in this. Overall, what's your reading of the kind of language war that has been played by people like Mr. Narayan Swamy, or the media war that has been used by the state quite effectively? And what does it mean for our fundamental rights?
Yeah, see, I think one of the things that we've said about the media, which is very worrying, is that it is two things. It is corporatized, heavily corporatized, and it is heavily upper class. And it is dominated by those who are not part of the political establishment, but who have access to it and who find various ways of controlling it, like multinationals, for instance. in Koodankulam, I think there is an additional factor. This is the first time that we are seeing the state come out and say openly that we have power and we will decide how we want to use it. And the law cannot bind us. We can use the law to do what we want to do. This use of the sedition provision, for instance, is a classic case of a state not even needing to hide behind anything when it is treating itself as in a state of exception in relation to the law, because they know that, okay, even if all the cases fall at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because they've had their purpose served. You can pick people up, you can put them away. It's a total abuse of a power that actually doesn't exist, but which they have managed to cultivate for themselves. I think this is the first time that, when people ask what's the difference between colonial times and now, I think in colonial times you knew who was on which side, you knew who the colonizer was and you knew who the people of India were. I think after all these years, it's only now that an us and them in this context has got created. Koodankulam has actually shown us that.
Thank you.